Wizard of the Wood. Chapter 18. Back to beg for a friend. Rylir was at the town's edge within a matter of minutes, rather than the hours it would have taken to walk the distance from the edge of the forest to here. He knew walking back was going to be painful, but the arcane blessing Essie gave him of speed was a hearty boon and immense time saver, to say the least. The moment he stepped foot into the town, he knew all eyes would be on him. Not only was he unharmed, but he had also vanished, dragged out to the woods, only to be left there for dead by those 4 men, and then taken by the sorceress of Fanged Ridge. There were undoubtedly going to be questions, and Rylir wasn't sure he was ready for them. He recalled elements the last day he was here in town. It was a chilly day. He remembered minding his own business, waking in one of the nearby alleys, and hearing a few passing groups talking about an attack that happened the night before. It was disheartening and sad. But Rylir didn't know the woman except for one conversation they had in the main thoroughfare. He barely made it to his feet when the 4 men approached out of nowhere and confronted him, surrounding him and making a scene in front of everyone. The rest was a complete blur. The beatings, the accusations, the mortifying feeling of being left alone to the whim of a giant. How things had changed.
Hey, you! No loitering, nomad. Get lost or I'll...
A hefty shop owner stomped down the steps of his shop when his eyes narrowed. Rylir took a few steps away and pulled his hood further over his head. Perhaps this wasn't a good idea to come. "Sorry, I'll be on my way," muttered Rylir as he hurriedly tucked himself into the nearest alleyway and began jogging through the streets. He felt confident enough that he wasn't going to be pursued, but he kept moving quickly and quietly until he spotted the lady's home. Lady Teresa Lonte was an up-and-coming socialite, born to a wealthier family. Her fiancé was also some kind of wealthy entrepreneur, and the families seemed to be taking advantage of their children's ages to unite the families. She was a kind, sweet person, even though Rylir had only met her the one time, and it was a tragic thing that happened to her. Rylir watched the home for a few moments before his eyes picked up the slightest bit of movement from behind the house near the garden. It was her, and she was alone for the time being. Then, before he could step out, a man stepped out into the garden and approached her. The man was undoubtedly her fiancé. His youthful features and arrogant demeanor were all Rylir needed to identify him. Rylir was far enough away to not be noticed, but he could pick up elements of their conversation. "Today is a very important day, pet. Remember your role, and perhaps I'll consider your request," he said before making his way back into the house. What was that about? Rylir didn't know much about high society, but he knew a bargain and a threat when he heard it. There was so little he could do now. Maybe Essie could help with some kind of rescue operation later, but Rylir had to at least plead for his friend's life. At the very least, he had to know the truth. Rylir knew this wouldn't look good if he were caught, but he had to know for sure if it was his friend. With the utmost stealth, he crept up to the house and stood by the edge of the garden until he spotted her sitting alone reading a book. Her blonde curls were fixed tightly beneath a winter bonnet, and she was fidgeting more than a lady was supposed to. She was nervous, and probably with good reason. Her words could end someone's life today. It was now or never. Rylir stood cautiously and stepped forward, which instantly caught Teresa's attention. Brown eyes widening, she stood hastily, mouth open to scream, but no sound came out. She started to stumble backward, but Rylir held up his hands in surrender and pulled his hood away, attempting to appear less threatening. "Please, my lady, I mean you no harm," he said softly. What? What do you want? Money? I'm sure I can..." she stammered. "No," reassured Rylir as he knelt. "I just want the truth. Do you recognize me at all?" Teresa shook her head, glancing nervously at the house and then back to him as if she were trying to gauge whether she could make it inside fast enough to avoid him. "My name is Rylir. I lived here for a short while 3 months ago. I'm a nomad. And the one who they thought attacked you," explained Rylir. Instantly, Teresa's eyes widened, and she backed up half a step. You're angry. Please, I'm sorry for the trouble," she stammered apologetically, but Rylir smiled reassuringly and shook his head. "No, I'm not. Really, please, believe me. Look, I'm just here to figure out the truth. My friend is being convicted today. Tried, because you said it was him who hurt you. I need to know if it was really him, or if it was someone else," said Rylir. He glanced at the house and then glanced around to make sure no one was sneaking up on him. The moment Rylir mentioned her being hurt, her demeanor changed. She was already nervous, but now she seemed more guarded, and she no longer was looking him in the eye. "I don't know what you're talking about. It couldn't have been anyone else," she stated rigidly. Rylir sighed and kept trying to catch her eye. "Are you sure? Really sure?" he asked calmly, to which she nodded in response a little too quickly. "Because a few months ago, they thought I was the one who hurt you. A group of guys found me and dragged me out into the woods because they thought I had hurt you and your honor." Her eyes widened, and she dared to glance up at him, catching his gaze for just a moment. "You?" she asked, no hint of recognition in her eyes. Rylir nodded, still trying to appear neutral and non-threatening. "I get it. Because I'm a nomad, we're side-eyed a lot. Some nomads cause trouble, but not me, and not my friend." Teresa looked back to the house nervously again before looking back at Rylir. Something in her posture shifted as she slowly sat down on the bench, a look of guilt creeping into her eyes. Rylir had a feeling deep in his chest that he was onto something. "Please, if it was him, I need to know. But if it wasn't..." Rylir looked at her pleadingly. He watched her shake her head ever so slightly. "No, it wasn't Ven," she said softly. He was always so nice to me. He's such a good listener." Rylir felt his insides flip upside down. Did she just say he was a good listener? Sure, Rylir knew that. But how did she? "What happened?" he asked, as if trying to coax a skittish kitten to his side. "Please, you can tell me." She gave Rylir a sharp, uneasy glance, pinching her lips together to form a thin line. It was like the truth was right there on the edge of a knife, balancing between a secret locked away for eternity and spilling out of her like water over a dam. The girl nibbled at her lower lip nervously as she began speaking softly. He was kind to me. He helped keep up the flowers and cleared away the snow from the path. He made sure I wouldn't slip. Then, when Vin was the one who made him stop, muttered Teresa. Every word made tears bubble up in her eyes until, finally, they spilled over her cheeks. She was trembling, obviously nervous and frightened. Rylir felt his chest clench as the lady choked on a sob that had risen in her throat. He beat him so horribly, and after he tried to save me. Rylir couldn't believe what he had just heard. Every ounce of warmth in his body drained as he listened to the young woman sob before attempting to regain composure over herself. I'm so sorry, Rylir said softly. It was a risk, but one he knew he needed to take. He dared himself to approach closer and closer until he was kneeling in front of her. Gingerly, he reached out his hand and offered it to her, and immediately she grasped it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? Do you think you'll forgive me? She sobbed. Shh, it's okay. I know Ven, and I know he's not angry. Not with someone as kind as you. But please, my lady, you have to tell someone. You have to tell them before his sentencing today. Please, his life depends on your words, pleaded Rylir, his heart beginning to beat out of his chest. The young woman looked into Ryler's eyes. I know, she choked out, and my life depends on my words too. Rylir bit his lip and turned his head away, which seemed to alarm the lady for a moment as he sighed. Then, please consider it. I can help you, just like I can help my friend. I need a little more time. Can you do that? Can you give us time? Hi! Rylir and Teresa both nearly jumped out of their skin as they looked to the door to see a young man standing there. It was the same man from before who intimidated Teresa, and Rylir felt his blood run cold as he recognized the young man as one of the four who had pulled him out to the woods. The man's eyes widened as he recognized Rylir. You were dead. It took you. Rylir needed to do something to de-escalate the situation. Instinctually, he held his hands up and took an apologetic step backward. No, I just came back because I need to clear my friend's name, said Rylir as he began backing away from Teresa. No, that you're here as a spy. You're that sorcerer's puppet. This was going horribly wrong. He looked back to the lady pleadingly. Please, for Ven, he said. Just give us time. Then, not knowing what else to do, Rylir turned on his heel and began sprinting away back through the alley streets, the shouts of the man ringing out behind him. This wasn't going well at all, but he couldn't stop now. One street after another, he darted through until he was confident the shouts were far behind him, and that there was no one pursuing him. Rylir knew he had a long way to run, and it all could have been in vain. Still, at least he tried. He tried to fight, and hopefully she would try to fight too. She had to. Rylir couldn't have known the biggest fight was yet to come, and he was sprinting headlong toward it.